Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 261 of a Wrestling Gal podcast, providing you with the female perspective on all things wrestling. Join me, your host and wrestling enthusiast, Ella J. As today, I am joined by the Queen of the North, Freya The Slaya. Now let's chat. Hello, everybody. Today I am joined by the Queen of the North, Freya The Slaya. So how are you today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm fantastic to be speaking with you today. It's a bit rainy where I am right now, but what is it like where you are right now? I'm very curious.
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and it is super hot. We're like well into summer, so it's like high 80s and humid already.
I believe it too. And so before we deep dive into all things wrestling and such, I heard you're very fond of energy drinks, much like myself. Does that still reign true for you, would you say?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So I'm very curious to know which ones are like your favorites and which one are you not really a fan of?
I think my go-to lately has been actually the Mountain Dew ones. Have you had those?
I didn't even know that there's Mountain Dew energy drinks. What?
Yeah, there's sugar-free ones, but there's one that's like tropical flavored. It's so good. So I've been living off that one. Before, I drank so many Bangs, I think I can't even drink them anymore. I did it in.
Fair. I don't know if you've tried it, but I'm a really big fan of the Rain Orange Dreamsicle. It's so good. It tastes like a creamsicle, just like carbonated. It's really good. If you haven't tried it, I highly suggest it.
That one is good. I think my favorite Rain, though, is the white gummy bear one.
That's a good one, too. There's also one that's called Lit. It has a gummy bear, and I think there's a flavor called Morning Dew. It's very similar to that. That one's really good, too.
Those are good. Think that, and then the only other one I think I really love are the ghost ones that taste like Sour Patch Kids.
I haven't had that one. I don't even know where you would. I haven't seen it anywhere. Interesting.
They have it at our Kroger. I don't know if you have Kroger where you're at.
We don't, but it's probably at our Wegmans or something like that. I'll have to check it out then. Huh. It's called Ghost?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to have to look this up now because I'm all down for trying a new energy drink. Even though they're bad for us, they get us through the day. Have you had any today?
I did right before the gym.
Okay, which one did you have today?
Actually, today I had a C4. Just like a pre-workout one.
Yeah, I like the orange one in that one. That one, to be fair, I like anything orange really, but those are really good too. But definitely too. I feel like too, along the same lines, do you have any favorite snacks for long travel days or when you're on the road?
Oh, that's a good question. It all just sort of depends on the weather, honestly. Because like in this weather, I feel like I don't want to eat anything that I would eat when it, you know what I mean? When it's winter. So I've been just living off of like cold things.
Like, okay, so I mean, there's many things. There's like ice cream popsicles. There's also like, there's like frozen yogurt too and stuff. What have been your like go-tos lately for adapting to the heat?
Yeah. Let's see. Lately, I have been killing like pre-chopped up fruit. Like I love pineapple. I could eat pineapple until it makes my mouth raw. Like big fan. That, and then I also really love salads with fruit in them. I think maybe it's just like a fruit thing. When it's summer, that's all I want is fresh
I'm a
fruit.
big fan of fruit. The only fruit I don't really love is blueberries, but anything else I will honestly eat. Pineapple's really good. I feel like people underestimate mangoes. Those are really good. Yes. I mean, strawberries. I could go for some fruit right now that you say it.
Yeah.
They're really good. And switching gears here, I mean, I found it really fascinating too with everything in wrestling that you put together your own backyard women's promotion a few years ago before even entering the ring you're like professionally yourself. So can you tell me more about the process of starting it up and even gathering talent for that?
It's crazy. Like I never thought living in Alaska I could be an actual wrestler. Just because you know what I mean? It's so secluded. There's so few people there. Even now with it like being more in its heyday, there's still probably less than 30 wrestlers in the whole state. And so then it just didn't seem like super attainable, you know what I mean, like, and realistic. But then I decided to just give it a try. And then after doing that for a very short amount of time, I was like, you know what, forget it, I'm gonna fully do wrestling. And so yeah, that it was like very brief, but it did definitely spark the passion where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to actually become a professional wrestler.
Yeah, so I mean, especially too, I know you've talked about it, like you were basically the first female in Alaska to be wrestling. So how did that even go forward with putting together your all-female backyard wrestling program? How did you go about finding talent or people willing to work those shows?
So it was more like I would say less wrestling, more like acting, like
Okay.
through the vein of wrestling. But I don't know, in Alaska, it's one thing, like there's so few people that I feel like people are super willing to like try different things. Do you know what I mean? You're like super open-minded and down to like do things with other people.
That makes sense too. I mean, I mean, I don't know how much else there is to do in Alaska too. So I feel like especially if I was from a small town, that I'd kind of want to do something maybe like, and not that it's adventurous, but something new and fresh like that too.
Exactly.
Definitely makes sense too. I mean, I feel like too, if maybe you were to book your own all women show, who would you book in the main event and why?
Oh, that's a great question. Hmm. So yeah, after I did that, I actually did start booking regular wrestling shows just because once I was actually training and I was going in and out of state training, I still wanted to be able to do shows in Alaska, and there's still not any other female wrestlers in the whole state. So while I was doing shows there, I would fly in women to work me all the time. And one of my dreams was to do an all women's show and call it like Queen of the Mountain and do it in Denali National Park. So that's funny you ask, because that's like been subtly on my bucket list for a while, but
Who would
it's
be
just
some
so
of
hard getting people.
Yeah, I mean, especially too with trying to find connecting flights and all of that, but I'm sure you've thought
Yeah.
about like maybe what talent you would have on there. So who are some talent that if this Queen of the Mountain came into fruition that you would love to feature on this show?
Oh, that's so tricky. Man, it's hard because there's so many people that I love and respect in wrestling, and just, you know, you can watch anything they do and they just kill it, right? But I think I would probably also want to pick some people I know who are under the radar, who I think have so much to offer and kind of get overlooked sometimes. But let's see. First off, I would have to go with one of my best wrestling friends. Her name's Lilith Grimm. She's out of Colorado.
Mhm.
Such a beast. We had the best match this Christmas, and so I just know she'd go in the ring and kill it with anybody. Who else would I want to book? It's so hard because like there's so many amazing women
I
in wrestling.
know.
It's like I don't even want to say because I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like leave people out. But for some variety, let's see here. I think a lot of West Coast women get overlooked. Like, I just feel like West Coast wrestling is really starting to blow up. And so a woman that I worked with a few times and really enjoyed out of Vegas is Sandra Moon. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
I love her. I have her merch too. I've spoken with her twice before.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Lightning in a Bottle.
No, for sure. We trained for a while at the same place in Vegas. She's so phenomenal. And I really think she's just like up and coming, about to be a full star. I say also out of the West Coast, probably Dark Chic. I don't know if you watched much of her work, but
Hood Slam,
she's
yep.
so great. Oh yeah, so good. Hood Slam and GCW lately. Gosh, yeah, I don't know. It's so tricky. There's so many people.
No, there's some solid names, and of course, you yourself would be on the card there. Definitely wrestling. If you were to have a Queen of the Mountain match, I mean, you would definitely have to be in there as well. And I feel like too, you've accomplished a lot in your career thus far. I mean, OVW Women's Champion, you've been an NWA, AEW, but reflecting back on like all your life accomplishments, both personally and professionally, what are a few that you're just generally proud of?
Oh, that's a good question. I think before I was wrestling, I was a middle school teacher.
Yeah.
And so I think honestly that was a big accomplishment for me. Like I really loved teaching, and I think like when you're teaching, it can be hard to feel like you're making a difference, but then you can have a student like say how you helped them or something you did for them, or even if they come up to you years later and they're like, wow, I really loved you as a teacher. You know what I mean? I think little things like that really stick with you just because it's so personal.
Yeah, that
So I
makes
think
sense.
that is definitely big, because I felt like I put so much of myself into teaching while I did it, but then like I really did get burnt out on it because I felt like I really did invest so much emotionally, you know?
Makes sense too. And you went to college in Michigan too. Was it for like education and all of that, or what was your
No,
actual program? I'm very
no,
curious.
no. I've changed what I've done in life so many times. But no, I initially went to school for graphic design and marketing. And after college, I actually worked at a newspaper doing layout and design. So that was like my first thing. And I did that for a while. And then I went back to Alaska, got my master's in education, and then was a middle school teacher.
Do you
And
feel
then
like,
quit all that to wrestle.
I mean, it's to be fair, I'm doing something that's not even related to my degree in psych. So I completely understand that. Do you do anything currently or in the last few years with graphic design? Because I feel like you'll always have that like talent in the back of your pocket, I would think.
For sure. I feel like honestly, as random as all the things that I've done in life are, they really have helped me in wrestling. Because how many times have I needed to make a logo for something or merch or posters, flyers, graphics? So I feel like I use that in wrestling all the time.
And that makes sense too. I mean, especially too with like your social media and your brand. I mean, you have that as a
Yeah.
backup to where you can do it yourself, which I think is really, really cool. And not a lot of people have the talent or the resources to be able to do.
For sure.
And I mean, going along with that too, your brand, I feel like your ring gear is very cool. It's very essential to the Queen of the North. But I'm very curious, like, where do you draw inspiration from for your ring gear? I mean, you have like this beautiful blue and gold going on here too, especially, but just
Mhm.
in general, like, what are some of your inspirations for your ring gears?
So a lot of my gear I actually made myself. So a lot of it was inspired by what I was capable of sewing.
Fair.
Because when I was living in Alaska, I tried to order gear a few times, but like the fit was off or it just didn't come together the way I wanted it. And I feel like when you're wrestling, you really need it to fit well. You know what I mean? So like I I wouldn't say I'm an amazing seamstress, but I was like, I can do enough. I can figure it out. So a lot of what I made was honestly inspired by what I could do and what I
And
could learn off of YouTube.
I mean, that's fair too. What would you say is like the longest process that you've had making one set of gear?
Oh gosh. I think when I was very first getting started, it took me a really long time to learn to make patterns because like you want everything tight fitting, but then at the same time not too tight
Yeah.
and with pulling, you know what I mean? So I spent so much time with like large sheets of wrapping paper trying to make patterns. I don't know, it's the cheapest way if you're sewing and you need
I'm
big paper.
I mean, it's smart too, and God bless YouTube
Yeah,
because otherwise I think it
100%.
would like take forever to try and experiment with something. God bless the internet sometimes, honestly.
Yeah, so like the first three sets of gear I made, I never even wrestled in. Like I made like at least three full sets just for practice, out of fabric that I didn't care about very much. So I think that was kind of probably what took the longest, was feeling like I was good enough to make something that I would actually wear in public.
Have you thought about like maybe like upcycling it or recycling it somehow to maneuver into like a future ring gear or like one of your current ones? I feel like, or like even accessorize with it.
I have actually given, I think at this point, I've given them away to people who
Oh,
needed ring gear. Like there was nothing technically wrong with them. They just
mhm.
didn't fit me very well. So I've passed them on.
Fair enough. Well, hopefully they have a good home now and hopefully we get
Yeah.
to see them some way in some fashion. But I mean, another essential element for the Queen of the North is definitely your crown. And so,
Hmm.
can you give us more insight into how this was made and the structure of it?
Oh, I actually have a few right now, but I think that's been kind of a learning curve, figuring out how I could get it to stay on my head well enough to like get in the ring with it but then also be able to easily get it off.
Yeah.
Because for a while I was pinning it to my head so I could get in, but then it just looks awkward in the ring trying to get it all out. So I've gone through like 5 iterations of crowns. And I actually could show you the newest one I just got that I'm very excited about.
Ooh.
I know, going for like more of an ice queen sort of thing. Mm-hmm.
So there's one, and I don't know if it is pyrite, but it looks like pyrite shapes. It's gold. I don't know if that's like the crystal or the structure of it. Do you know like what that one is made out of? I'm just very curious myself for that one.
It's quartz. They're hand-painted quartz.
Ah, that's why. It looks like pyrite, which I think looks really cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's pretty cool. You got the energy too on your head too.
Yes, I love that one. It's just extremely fragile and broke many times, and I kept replacing the crystals in it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't meant for long travel and getting thrown in a gear bag.
Fair, and plus it's shifting everywhere. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. How do you get your stuff to stay on? Like, is it like it has to be tight, or do you have like pins? Like, how do you get it to stay on?
So lately I've been getting crowns that are more like headbands, where they can just kind of fit onto your head. That's been like the trick. So I tried all these different ones. Actually, let's see. I wore this one for a while, but then I put a headband on it to make it stay. But it still, it's hard to find crowns that can handle traveling and suitcases. So I think it's still an evolving process.
Yeah, and even trying to find like a protective case, like that shape that can even be able to like, I bet. Makes sense though. You want to protect it too for the long, especially too where it's such like an essential element to the whole queen vibe. I feel like you gotta protect it for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, your name Freya too comes from the Norse goddess associated with love, beauty, fertility, sex, war, gold, and more. But if you yourself could maybe be the goddess of something, what do you think it would be and why?
Well, that's such a good question. I think maybe the goddess of resilience.
Why so for you?
Why so? I think like with my heritage and then also just like my immediate family, I come from a long line of people who are survivors.
And that makes sense too, especially to resiliency is something that, I mean, not a lot of people have through all of their life stories and all of that. And I feel like that's really cool. I don't know. I like that a lot. I feel like there's a lot of meaning behind it too. I like that, Freya. I really do. I mean, especially too, from your perspective, I mean, a big part of your look too is definitely your tattoos too. And so I'm very curious to know more about the tree tattoo on your leg, like the meaning behind that, like when you got it, etc.
That one I got when I was quite young. But I think a lot of cultures have that representation of a tree, you know what I mean, and being rooted, but also being willing to grow. I think that's so important. Do you know what I mean? Like knowing your roots and where you come from, but not being stuck in that, and also still evolving and going through the cycles in life. And I think, you know what I mean? Trees are so integral to many cultures in that way.
No, it makes sense. Like you want to stay rooted, but also trees have to grow and blossom too. And also, I mean, not forgetting where you come from and your background and your roots, but also being open to like also the seasons too and all of that, and adapting and growing and evolving. Yeah, I like 100%. That too. And I mean, on your other leg too, there's some type of bird. I don't know exactly what it is, but could you tell me more about that one too?
That's a Native Alaskan Tlingit raven. I'm Native American, not Native Alaskan, but the school I taught at was an Indigenous Native charter school. And so I have a really deep connection to that culture, or a lot of Native Alaskan cultures actually. So I knew I always wanted an Alaska tattoo, but I wasn't sure what I would do. And so then, you know, working at that school and then being around a lot of people from that culture really inspired me. And then even just the stories of the Native raven, I think, are really important. And so that's why I decided to get that one.
I mean, especially too, it's cool too, especially if you're going to get something like those are very predominant tattoos too, that you definitely feel invested and like love it too. I feel like too, you have to, right?
Yeah. And it's actually funny when I got them, I wasn't wrestling and I literally picked those locations because I didn't think people would see them very much.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I'll get these tattoos for me. Nobody will see them. And now in wrestling, like you said, they're super prominent. And it's like, well,
They look really cool though through the fishnets and the tights like that. They like I feel like it makes you like I don't know how to explain it. It stands out a lot more too.
interesting. Well, that's good to know. I've been contemplating adding two. I just haven't decided what I want yet.
Like on your like leg too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of choices too, and especially in today's society, there's a lot of creative freedom too. So you could do a
Yeah.
lot with it. I like intertwine it or just do something like completely separate.
Definitely.
Going back quickly to, I mean, the whole essence of the Queen of the North and your ring gear, from your perspective, like what other ring gears do you admire in today's generation? I feel like people have been stepping up their game. And so who do you think
Definitely.
maybe has the best ring gear game or aesthetic in pro wrestling today?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think I really love the new gear that Billy Starks is wearing.
Yes.
I think that gear because I love Japanese women's wrestling, especially like from the 90s. And so their gear game was always and is always still on point, I feel like. And so I just love her reference to that.
I do too. And she
So,
has the whole blue hair going on too, and then the multiple colors. I'm a big fan of it.
yeah, that gear is just so beautiful. Who else's aesthetic do I think looks really great? I was literally just thinking about someone's gear. Oh, I think I like her gear also because I relate to it, but I've always really liked Lady Frost's gear. It's funny though because I didn't even know who she was at first, and then I saw this white cloak. I mean, years ago, I had no clue who she was, and then I was like, "Huh, that seems really like Arctic as well." And then Lady Frost. So, yeah, I think her gear game is really good.
Have you been able to wrestle her before?
I haven't. I was supposed to wrestle her a year and a half ago, actually, in Alaska, but I broke my collarbone and then was not able to.
Yeah, I saw the picture with the scar like right over here. I'm assuming that's around that time. They gotta, I mean, you gotta get it. You're both like Arctic queens. You just
I
have
know.
to, somebody's got to book this now. It has to happen.
I agree. I was super bummed. Like of a lot of the matches I had to miss because of that. That was definitely a big one.
Well, hopefully it comes into fruition for you for the future. But as you look towards the future, what are some of your personal or professional goals you'd like to accomplish soon?
I think some of my goals in wrestling coming up, I've always wanted to wrestle in every single state.
Yeah.
So like that's just like a small goal just for me. I've always wanted to, you know what I mean, at least see this scene in at least once in every state. I also have never wrestled out of the country, so that would be a big one for me as well.
Definitely too. I feel like, I mean, talking about like Arctic, I mean, Canada is right there. So hopefully
Yeah,
you get to able to experience that scene. There's a lot of cool talent up there that I think you would mesh with so well. And so again, manifesting it for you.
thank you.
And to close things out, we are all about hashtag girl power here on A Wrestling Gal. So who are some females in your personal or professional life you think that inspire or empower you?
Oh gosh. I think in wrestling, one of my biggest inspirations is always Awesome Kong.
Yeah.
When I was trying to figure out kind of my character and who I wanted to be, I was listening to a bunch of old podcasts of hers, and she was talking about how because of her like size being, like a bigger, stronger woman, that they always wanted to put her in this monster role, you know what I mean, being the big aggressor. But it was interesting. She said that she always felt like she would have been a great like Pam Grier, like sexy wrestler, like pinup-y. And she's like, I always felt like I really could have done that and pulled that off. And so I thought that was so interesting, where now I feel like a lot of times people do try to put me in that box of being like, you know what I mean? like the big scary monster, but I always wanted to go out and be like, no, even though I am bigger than most people I wrestle, I want to feel comfortable in my own skin. And for me, that means having like a little bit of sex appeal or how I feel sexy. You know what I mean? And so I was like, no, I can fucking do both. Like I can be, you know, an aggressive, strong, bigger than people wrestler, but then also have some sort of sex appeal.
Yeah. And I
And
mean,
so
Kia Stevens is flipping phenomenal. I got to see her at NWA Empower where she announced her retirement. And so, I mean, I do hope you get one moment with her just for that full circle moment for you sometime.
yes.
But I feel like that is like such a relatable essence for you. And you definitely carry yourself in a way that I am a big fan of too.
Thank you.
And so she's definitely one that I think a lot of people look up to, and rightfully so. She's absolutely phenomenal.
Speaking of that NWA thing, she was always, when people asked me like, who's on your bucket list to wrestle?
Yeah.
She was always the very top of the list. So it did break my heart a little when she announced her retirement.
I know. I mean, it came out of nowhere too. Then again, we were in like the pandemic, so there really probably wasn't a platform to be able to make that. But I mean, a lot of people say they're retired in wrestling when they're not really retired. So who knows?
It's true.
Never say never. I've learned that.
That's a good point.
But before I let you go, can you please tell the listeners where they can find you on all your social medias?
All right, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all as Freya The Slaya.
And thank you so much for joining me today, Freya. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me.